Okay, so is the screen uh, clearly visible? No. Okay. And it would be better if you uh, open up your mics and speak because I cannot basically see what's going in the background when I'm sharing a window, right? So, um, yeah. So in the last session, we looked at how do you basically use a single template, uh, a single base template, and use it to uh, create more web pages using template inheritance. So as you see, let me just revise it for a bit. And then move on. So as you can see, this is a base template. This is our dynamic part, and this is our second dynamic part. And they can be adjusted by using this content with of the type block. Right? And then you basically say extend the base template, and then you change the dynamic part as you wish. Right? So we learned this much, and now we will be learning how you can push data to the um, how you can push data to a website, and how can you create uh, basically Django forms. Right? So we'll be doing that. And so let's start. So as you can see right here, this is a view function. Alright, and every view function returns something. So here we return a render object which takes the first parameter as a response. But this is by default. This has to be like this, and the web page that it wants to render, and sorry, yeah, this is the data we want to send. Right. So let's say, just give an example. On the server for now. Right, so let's say I say a variable name, which is name, and then badge of name. Like Python. Right? Now to send this data to a web page, we basically create a dictionary. Right, so I'll say a dictionary where the key is name, the value is this variable, which roughly translates to, which roughly means something like this. Right? So saying this actually means this. Correct. So we created a variable and we passed it uh, with a key name and the value of this variable. Right? This is basically simple Python syntax. So then we say batch. I'll show you something. I made a error here on purpose. So let's say batch. Alright. So now that I've passed the data to my index page, now I can basically use this by using the variable syntax. Right? And now I just have to say name and now this will give us an error, and I'll tell you why. Because yeah, and this, as you can see, it says here Rajasthan, and there's the pattern, and it does not say the badge part. But if I say this, sure, yeah, there's the name part. I'll just basically what we are. So let's space right. So this was printed. This is the static part of the page, and this is the dynamic part. And as you can see here, the variables are basically called using the same name as the keys. Alright, so here the key is name, and here the key is PACTH. Right. So a slight mistake here can basically um, change the way your program works. So be careful that sorry, that the name of the key that you pass here is exactly the same as the name of the key, name of the variable you use here. Right. So a dictionary is passed here where the key names become the variable names here. Right. So this is basically how you passing data to your web pages, and this basically works as the normal uh, HTML syntax. So I'll say my name is, and then this. So only this part is replaced by the value of the key we passed here. So I just do this and save this. Yep. This is how this passing variable to web pages thing works, and I basically showed you this so because this is one of the most important things that you will um, have to do. Right? Now I'll show you why this is important. Now, as you can see, a web page, not our web page, any website has a form kind of, right? Now, what is a form basically? Right. So you will say form. For those who have studied HTML, must know that form is a space which has certain inputs and then a submit button. Right. So the form tag basically takes a method input, and let's put get. So I can show you what the difference between get and post is. So I'll say import type is text. The name is input, and the value is input. And then I'll say input type is equals to submit, name is equals to submit, and value is equals to. So I'll show you in a bit how this works, but this is how we basically create a form. Alright. First of all, everything that is part of the form is initialized between these closable uh, form tags. Now, the form tag basically takes a very important method, let's say attribute, called the method attribute, and we'll talk about what this is in a moment. And then the different parts of the form. For example, this is the input tag, which basically generates various kinds of input stuff, right? Like a text box, a checkbox, uh, let's say radio button. So here we have that a text box, and here we have generated a submit button. Right. So I'll just refresh it, and I'll say something like this is a form. Okay, so now this will basically be using error because this is a get type, but I need you to focus on this link here, alright? So when I click this, as you can see, whatever I typed inside it, alright, the input is equal to this is the form, and submit is equal to submit. Yeah, give me a second. Yeah. So as you can see, when I put the method, it's uh, the form method to get all the information that I passed inside the form, right, was pasted in the URL, right? So just to give you a glimpse of what just happened, I'll just make this and do this. Right. So I'll say this is input. Right. As I just did, I press submit. Now what happens here is this text box, right? This text box has the name input, right? Like this key, like this variable here, right? And then this submit button has a name of submit, which will take a which will take the value submitted when this button is clicked. That's when I click this button. As I should show you, this is another input. Alright, so I press submitted. As I told you, whatever. Just remove this value part so you don't get confused. And so you can say there's nothing here inside the text box. But as soon as I put in a value input here, this sets a default input value. So whatever I put inside the box is passed with the value attribute. Right. Whatever I input inside this box will have the key as the name, and the value as whatever is inside this text box. So I can say this and press submitted. This is the key as I gave the key using the name attribute, and this is the value. Right now, the default value I set here is input here, but it can be changed in case of text boxes. But in case of let's say buttons, that I created a submit button. Now every form must have a submit button because when you press the submit button, the form uh, this basically reloads the page with all the form information, right? So every form must have a submit button or button basically. You can use the button tag or the input tag, and it has a name submit. That means that submit is the key, right? And the value is submitted. So when I press the submitted button, the key is submit and the value is submitted. So by pressing this button, whatever value is uh, inside this text box is passed as the key, uh, is passed under the key name, whatever you call this name, and the submitted value, the value here is passed under the key this, right? And when you use the form method get, it basically pastes the final result inside your URL. But we do not basically want this. We want this information to be hidden. We use another method called post. Now that I now if I run this and yeah, I'll explain it in a bit. There's a it's underscore protein. So there's and as you can see this time nothing got added to the URL. All of this was hidden, right? All of this was passed secretly or discreetly to the server. Now we did not say anything here because we did not tell what to do when uh, response is received by the server, right? So now the response is received inside this response variable. Right? Whatever I typed here, right, whatever the form information is, the complete form information is passed inside this response variable. And now I will work with response variable to get this data out of there. Right. So I'll just show you something. I'll say print and I'll say response dot and I will have to remove this because this is like error. Remove this very. Now I'll show you something. Okay. Yeah. So I'll zero this page. As you can see, just edit it a little bit. See what's going on. Method is equals to, right? Syntax error, let me correct it. And the server. Yeah, so the server's name. And I reload this, and as you can see here, the method is get. But if I press the submit button, you can see the method has changed to post. Right. So basically, there are two types of methods when the server communicates with the web pages. The first one is the get method, which is basically used to only retrieve some data or show some data. But like for example, Google search. Right, Google search. If you search something, let me just show you like okay, Google. Yeah, now Google this again. Yeah. Now look at this link very carefully here. If I say Python, you can see this entire thing is printed. Right. So basically, for Google, uh, this is a form, right, which is all these attributes. And when I press the enter button, it uses the get method to show me stuff. Like now, how I know this is the get method because the search string, I can see what I basically searched here with the q variable or the query variable and all the other stuff. Like this stuff, sorry, and this stuff. So HP, the AI is all of this. Like I can see all of this inside my um, uh, link bar. I forgot what it's called, but let's call it link bar. So this means that this is a get method. Get method is not very secure, and it's only used when showing information to the user is not harmful. Like I cannot do anything with this search, with this complete data. I cannot do anything. But if I let's say put in my password and my password pops up here, all right, this will breach the security, and it would be basically completely useless entering my password discreetly. Right. So get method is only used when you need to show some information to the user, and the queries that you make. All right, the uh, showing the queries that you made to the user is not harmful. But for post, right, post is used when some data has to be sent discreetly over the server. Uh, say, post is used when data needs to be sent discreetly to the server, right, such that the user who is sitting on the website cannot access it. Right. So let me see if there's a post method form anywhere. Yeah. So there's no example, but one of the examples of a post type method is your login pages. Right, when you log in, none of the information shows up here, and it's hidden from the user and passed discreetly to the server. All right. So this is what post and get method basically is, and what the CRSF token is. It is a security token, all right, which is passed with the um, which is basically passed with the post method for security reasons. All right. So if the form method is post, this is very important. Otherwise, it will generate an error called forbidden something. Forbidden error. Let's call it forbidden error because the uh, post method is secure, and the uh, CRF token needs to be verified when using a post method. Alright, so this is the difference. There is the difference between a post method and get method. So I'll show you something else. Now let's say you want to differentiate between what happens to the web page when there's a post method and what happens to the web page when there's a get method. Right. So I'll say if response uh, there's a different method using classes, and we'll look into that maybe later. But for now, I'll show you the core method. So let's say if response of method is equals to post, do this part. All right. I'll show you right now. Let's copy this, and just first print it out for you. How a response or post method basically looks like. Right. So I'll do this again. Right. So I'll basically say text here. Sorry. And this is printed out to the console, right? Because of this print statement. So I'll explain what this is. First of all, we get something called a query dict. Alright, we get this part. We get this entire part. Alright, basically we get a dictionary which has the following stuff. This is the CSRF token which was generated here. Right? Then it has the uh, then it has the form. Let's say form result that we uh, got. Alright. So for the name input, that is the text box, we got text here, which are basically tagged inside the text box as you see. Alright, and for the submit button, which had the name submit, and I told you to the key of the information is the name that we provide. Alright, so the name I provided here is input. Let me just change it a bit so that it says text box and you can understand it better. So this and this. Right, so this is generated again, and this time the key is text box. Right, just as a name given here, and the submit button has the name submit. So this is the key, and when the button is pressed and the value submitted is passed. Alright, so this is what happens when you use a form. Alright, or more basically, this is what happens when you let's say this is what happens when you use the post method on the form. Now let's say I want to do something with this. Alright, so if we get post, I want to return a render here for now. This is, so I'll get index, and this is all the same. Now I want to pass the information that I got. Right, so that I do not have to do the same thing again and again. I will say that post equals to response .post. Alright. Now what this does is, this entire line does is stores this entire thing, this entire dictionary inside the post method, and now I can basically pass in this entire dictionary to my web page. Like I pass it to my web page, and I'll say you entered use the syntax, and I'll say post, and I'll say post. The dictionary I do not pass it as this. Okay. Right, so this is a dictionary, so I can pass it without using those curly braces because the curly braces is to initialize the dictionary. Right, so I'll say you entered text box, class, question headline, and then you do test, and I'll say submit. Let's run this again. As you can see, it says you entered nothing after this. Why is this? Because the text box uh, variable is not yet passed, and it says, and then you pressed, and it did not print the stuff because it is not passed yet. So let me do this, and as you can see, it says input here, uh, and you entered input here. As you can see, I made a mistake. Uh, so I did not make a mistake. It passed this entire thing uh, from within the list. It passed a complete list. And if I do something like this, it would give us an error because we cannot basically pass a list inside a template. Like we cannot pass a list using this mm, HTML page. So what I can say is, can say something like if text box, right? Now this is an if statement which says if text box returns a value, right? You entered, and then I say for p in text box. Box. Let's enter here. Do this, and then I say p, and then I say and for and and if. And I'll say the same thing. Okay. Change it so it says set copy in submit. So now it should correctly. I edit the for statement, and I edit the statement, and I started the statement, and started the for statement, and what part is generating an error? The end block part, and that is because I need to do this step. And submit. Okay, yeah, I forgot to close this. 2 seconds. Yes, as you can see now, nothing is printed here. And why is that? Because there is no value text box passed here. So this if statement is not executed, and because the if statement is not executed, this for statement is not executed, which is inside the if statement. Alright, so now when I do this, you can see I got what I wanted. That you entered input here, and this is without the curly braces. Alright, say text, and just change this time. And if I reload this, all of it vanishes. Alright, so what did I do right now? Uh, First of all, when you render the page, it will by default uh, render using the get method. Right. So the first time you open a page, it will basically get rendered in a um, get method. Right. Now, when you use a form, sorry, when you use a form which has a method get, and when you press the submit button, the information is passed using the post method, and the web page is loaded in the post method, and we catch that using response method, which basically gets the response type. As you can see right here, when I first loaded the page, it was loaded using get method, then it was loaded using get method, and when I typed something, it was loaded using post method. And this line, right, we check if the response method is equals to post. Alright. Now this has to be capital letters because in Python strings are matched in the exact case. For example, when two strings are compared, basically their ASCII values are compared, right? So it has to be all upper cases. So if the response method is post, we execute this. Sorry, the response method is post. We execute this part. Otherwise, we'll execute the remaining part. Right. So because the response method was post, we basically stored this entire thing. Go up here, go up here. So we stored this entire dictionary. Where is this behaving like this? This entire dictionary till here inside the post variable. And because post is a dictionary, we do not need to put it into a dictionary again. Right. So we pass it to the web page. Right. So when the web page is first loaded, that means in the get method, text box variable does not exist, because when it loads in the get method, uh, this return value is run. Sorry, sorry, this render value is run. And as you can see, this does not pass a variable at all. So during the first load, or when the method is get, this text box variable does not exist. Now, because a text box variable does not exist, the if statement fails, and the if statement extends from here to here. So this entire statement would not be executed. Okay. So uh, this is how the if statement works. You first have to initialize the if statement, and then you have to tell the web page where the if statement is ending. On the web page, you have to tell the Django template where the if statement is ending. So you do that by using the end if statement. That's it. Now inside it, I basically ran a for loop so that I can extract this input here from within the list part. Alright, because I cannot use list indexing, so I basically run a for loop so that I can extract this inside from inside the list. Right. So for T in text box, this is very basic Python syntax. Alright. So then I print T on the web page, and then I put an end for. So the for statement is only this line. Okay, you start the for and then you have to end the for. You cannot forget to end this. Alright, so you uh, set the ending part using the end for statement. And this is exactly what we did here again. Alright. Until the method was get, this submit value was not passed, so this entire statement was not run. And once it was passed, all right, when the method was post, this entire thing started executing, and then this for loop started executing, and because of the for loop, they started executing, which basically gave us this. Right. So this is how forms basically work in Django. Now, in the next class, just switch it back. The next class, we'll be looking at models for basically databases, basically tables. Tables, each entry inside the table and stuff, and how to make entry into your databases. And we'll look at something called Django forms. The Django forms are basically a simpler way to create forms, but I do not prefer it because it creates really ugly forms, and the website needs a good looking form so that it uh, basically looks good to the user. So I'll still show you how not Google Form, how Django forms work, and how you can enter form data inside the database. Alright, so if anyone has any questions regarding um, regarding today's session, they can ask me right now, or over the chat, or the next session. So yeah, experiment with experiment with all of this, and now that you know how to put in data into your web page, uh, I would, let's say, create an assignment and assign it to you by tomorrow, I guess. I'll give you I'll give you a small Django assignment by tomorrow, where you will have to take the screenshot of your use function and your HTML um, web page and your HTML file. Yeah? You will need to submit these three screenshots. The first one is the function, sorry, the function that is being triggered. The second is your web page, and the third is your HTML file. Right. So I'll be creating a I'll be creating an assignment soon, and yeah, that's it for today. Santosh ma'am, please take attendance, and as soon as my classes come to, you guys can. Thank you very much.
Yes, Pratik, can hear.